Hey there, my name is Livy Lynn and welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today we're going to be talking about some fun writerly things. We're going to be discussing what it means for your characters to be driven by desire. I'm going to be sharing with you one of the biggest writing tips that I have discovered through my own writing that I've applied to my stories, that I've seen this strategy applied to so many other books, movies. So much of my favorite content has all followed this tip. This specific strategy is called creating characters that are driven by desire. If you've been following me for any length of time, you know that I've talked about this before in previous videos. But today I wanted to dive in a little bit deeper and discuss this topic. The reason being that as authors, none of us want to create flat characters. We want our characters to be very dynamic and fun and interesting. And one of the best ways we can do this is by giving them a desire. When I get a new story idea, before diving in and creating my masterpiece, I like to ask myself a few questions. Now, some authors are driven by plot. They are very focused on their plot and they like to plan everything out ahead of time. Me, on the other hand, I'm much more of a pantser. I like to fly by the seat of my pants and write as things come to me. But with that being said, that does not mean that I dive into my novel without any planning whatsoever. I always start with my characters, because I believe that the characters are the heart of your story and everything that is in your story should revolve around your characters. So next time you are creating a character profile for this new story idea that you're working on, I would totally recommend taking some of these things into consideration. The first thing I ask myself is, what does my MC, my main character, truly want? What do they dream of? What is it that they're trying to attain in this life? I always like to set a conscious goal for my main character and then think about the action steps that they're going to take throughout the story to work toward this goal that they have in mind. Doing this right at the beginning of your story, letting your readers know that your character has a specific goal or desire and dream in mind, really helps bring your readers right into the situation along with them. It plants the question in their minds, oh wow, this is interesting. How is this character going to attain this dream or goal or idea? Are they going to attain it, or are we going to get to the end of the story and it's not going to happen? Like, what is this going to look like? I'm super interested to find out what their journey will look like as they're headed toward this dream. That is a perfect starting point. Once you know what your character's main goal, dream, desire is, there is another side of this to be considered. Oftentimes, authors only go that far. They only think about what this dream is and then they start writing the novel and that's all they do. But I would like to take it a step further and think about this a little bit deeper. Because the thing is that humans are very complicated. We're complex creatures. Oftentimes we have more than one desire, and sometimes we even have desires that battle against each other inside ourselves. So I want to talk about the idea of having your conscious desire and then your subconscious desire. The cool thing about creating characters that have both a conscious desire and a subconscious desire is that you can really create a lot of inner turmoil and conflict between the two. And what's really fun is that your characters don't even know what their subconscious desires are. That way they can be behaving in ways that are working toward their conscious goal, but yet they'll be doing these things that are in congruence with their non-conscious goal, and it really causes a lot of craziness going on. They might be thinking, well, that sounds extremely complicated. Why would I want to do that? I want to show you guys a few examples of amazing stories that have taken this idea of having a conscious desire and a subconscious desire and how these stories have played out, because chances are these might be some of your favorite stories and you didn't even realize that they had applied this principle and were doing this in your favorite story. The three stories that I want to bring up today are Tangled, Newsies, and Anastasia, the Broadway edition. Tangled is a great example that I talk about all the time because really the whole story is about dreams and desires. Bottom line, we all know that Rapunzel's simplest desire was to see the floating lanterns gleam. She wanted to get out of the tower, go out, and see those lanterns on her birthday. That was all she wanted in life. It's super clear. She is so focused, so driven to reach this goal. But you'll notice within the story that every time she takes a step forward, opposition comes against her. And if you examine any of your favorite stories, you'll see this pattern. Character has a goal, they take a step toward it, and things happen that keep pushing them backwards that they have to try to overcome. Flynn, on the other hand, is a little bit more complicated. He's an ex-con, he is a man on the run, and his dream and desire is to get out of trouble. His dream and desire is to get away from the men who are coming after him. So when Flynn gets wrapped up in Rapunzel's world, like literally wrapped up in her hair, things start to change for him. But even though his situation is getting a lot more complicated, his main goal is still the same. He needs to get out of this bad situation. But Rapunzel, being the smart young woman that she is, decides to take advantage of this random stranger that has come into her home and use it to her advantage. So we have a little bit of manipulation here, which just goes to show us how badly this girl wants this dream to happen. So she takes the crown hostage, which is the number one jewel, the number one object of Flynn's affection at that point in his life. And she says she'll give it to him when he takes her to see the floating lanterns gleam. Very simple, straightforward. We know what Flynn wants and we know what Rapunzel wants. But the fun part is that they want two different things, and because of that, there is a lot of conflict between the two. The battle of desires is what makes this story really interesting, and what makes it even more fun and interesting is how eventually they fall in love. At last they see the light, things start to change for them. Rapunzel decides to give the crown to Flynn, and in a way, Flynn decides to give it right back to her. Now I love this because it's very symbolic and it is a symbol of surrender. It's like he's giving up this dream and desire that he thought he had, and he's exchanging it for a new dream and desire, which is Rapunzel herself. Eugene then realizes what his subconscious desire is versus this other desire that he thought was most important to him. His values change, and all of a sudden the subconscious desire rises to the top and he decides to pursue that instead. So after the most magical scene in all of Disney history, he heads off to try to make his wrongs right and put his action where his mouth is and show Rapunzel just how much she truly means to him. His choice to love and put someone else first becomes more important to him than selfishly trying to gain notoriety and popularity and wealth and riches through being this super cool bandit dude. And I love that because it is a moment of surrender. It is a moment of showing how his value systems have changed. Eugene goes to give the crown to the Stabbington brothers, make the wrongs right, and that's when things go crazy again, because now he has this new desire. His subconscious desire that was there all along has risen to the top. He's taking steps to pursue that, and disaster ensues. This causes even more conflict between the two, and this causes internal conflict within Rapunzel, where she sees this staged betrayal and she starts to think, oh no, what if my mother was right? What if these lies that I've been hearing my entire life are still true? Story continues. They have more to fight through, rescue scenes, all sorts of stuff they have to fight through. But as things begin to unfold, the two main characters express their selfless acts of love, one act after another, and boom, true love wins. Flynn went from selfish to selfless, and that is a character arc that we all love. Now, I talk about character arcs a lot, and sometimes people ask me, well, I don't get it. What is a character arc? A character arc is everything that I just explained. We have a beautiful example of a character arc in Flynn to Eugene's story. Now let's talk about Newsies. We also see a very similar storyline in Newsies as well. In the beginning, Jack Kelly was super focused on himself, his dreams, his desires. He wanted to go to Santa Fe. He wanted to get out of the crazy world, and the only way that he saw doing that, shifting into his, his conscious dream, his conscious desire, was to get on a train and go to Santa Fe. And in order to do that, he needed money. So he does what a young, hardworking man has to do. He earns money, and then obstacle comes up. The villain, Pulitzer, the newspapers against him, he has to strike, all this crazy stuff. We see the same thing that we saw with Flynn. We saw he had the conscious desire, but then he had these obstacles that he kept coming against. He kept hitting a wall, and he had to keep fighting. Hence the reason that they all line up and sing at the top of their lungs about seizing the day and taking down the enemy, and it gets super intense. But as the story continues, we begin to realize what Jack's subconscious desire is as it slowly rises to the top. And then when he has the opportunity to get on a train and go to Santa Fe, what does he decide to do? His subconscious dream and desire has slowly become stronger and more powerful than what his conscious dream was. In the end, he realizes what he has always wanted is family. He's always wanted to belong. He's always wanted to love others, look out for others, take care of them, and be part of a community, a family unit. So in the end, he decides not to go to Santa Fe, and he chooses to stay with his family. Totally different dream from what we hear at the beginning of the movie. Hence, we have another awesome character arc. Now we have Anastasia, the Broadway edition. I find this plot line with Dimitri super similar to Tangled, where in the beginning of the story, Dimitri's goal is to please himself. He's a con artist. He is always looking for a way to make an extra buck. He has grown up on the streets, so, he has a little bit of a justifiable reason for that, in the same way that Jack had that same sort of mindset, in the same way that Flynn had that mindset. They all had this similar, they had to look out for themselves, and they were focused on what their immediate conscious dreams and desires were. When he hears all these rumors about the fact that Anastasia might be still alive and that he could earn some extra money if he could just find a girl and teach her how to behave like the long lost princess, and they could go and they could wow everyone with her incredible acting skills and hopefully earn a lot of money and become famous. But as the story continues, we all know how that turns out. And if you don't know how it turns out, I would totally recommend listening to the Anastasia Broadway soundtrack, because you can really get the gist of the whole story just by listening to the music. So eventually Dimitri's conscious desire is overpowered by his subconscious desire, as he too realizes that, he is in love with Anastasia. The desire to protect and take care of her and make sure that she is okay grows more powerful than this desire to just earn an extra dollar. On the flip side, we see the exact opposite of this character arc. So we see this good character arc developing with Dimitri, and we see this really negative, dark, sad arc developing with Vlad. The villain ends up choosing something far different in the end, which is quite tragic. Just be warned if you don't know the story. So in each of these stories, you find that the subconscious desire ends up winning, which I think is a really cool way to bring a lot of extra dynamic, interesting things to your characters. Not only does it help your characters become more colorful and jump off the page as real people, it also makes your stories far more interesting. So once you have figured out and decided what your main characters desire and what their subconscious desire are, you can start to plan the path toward pursuing that main desire. And as you're planning that path, you can plant all these little obstacles along the way. And that really can be the extent of your plotting. If you're like me and you're more of a pantser, that's really all you have to do. As long as you know what the desire is and you know some of the obstacles that are going to come up, and you know whether or not the subconscious desire will win in the end, you have your entire story figured out. On the most basic level anyway. I know many of you are intense plotters, and this isn't going to be enough for you. You're going to want to dive in even deeper and grab your scene cards and write out scene by scene, and that is totally okay. And that's what I love about this idea of having characters driven by desire, because it works for plotters and it also works for pantsers and everyone in between. So as your MC is pursuing this conscious desire, they're going to take steps, and with every step forward, it's going to feel like one step forward and 3 steps back, which will keep your readers on the edge of the seat, because they're going to be asking, how is this going to work out? Every step forward, it feels like we're going backwards. Are they going to reach this goal or not? So it's super engaging, super interesting, and your readers are going to want more. After so much opposition as they are pursuing this desire, your main character might go into a state of denial. That means if you have stacked up the odds against them so much, your main character might start to get really discouraged and feel like this is impossible. Oftentimes, when your character reaches this low spot, it is then the perfect opportunity to have someone or something or an event help propel them, pull them out of that pit, fill them with hope and courage again, and it's like they get that final thrust of energy and purpose and passion to try to push themselves over the finish line. But then, this is typically where things go from bad to worse. They have all this energy and excitement and joy, and they are ready to take on the world, and they do it, and they do that final push, and then that's when they really hit the wall, and that's when you have your big D, your big disaster. This is the moment when your readers really feel like throwing the book against the wall, or they're screaming at your book, and they're just so intensely invested because they feel like it's just impossible for your main character to win. And this is where you as the author have a huge choice to make. You can either A, bring about a happy ending and give your characters the sweet satisfaction of allowing your main character to overcome this final hurdle, and then they reach their happily ever after, and your readers can just sigh happily and know that all is well in the world. Or you can go with option B, where the main character realizes that their sparkly goal wasn't cracked up to be everything that they thought it was. And that is when their subconscious desire wins. So no matter what you do, you want to have one of the desires win. If you have no desire win, I feel like that would just be really depressing, and I don't know if people would read your next book in the series or your future books or not if they're really that discouraged. So it's always good to make sure that one of the desires win. But what's really fun about this is that it could go either way. And when you start to play around with this, you realize that they both bring about very different endings, but they can both still be extremely satisfying. Alright friends, that wraps up today's discussion. I hope you have enjoyed this video. If you did, please give it a thumbs up and comment down below. Let me know what you think about this idea. Have you ever applied this to your writing, and why or why not? For those of you who are perhaps readers and not writers, I would love to know what other stories you have seen this similar pattern happen in. Hearing back from you all is my favorite thing about making these videos, so please feel free to dive into the conversation. Let me know what you think, and I'll see you all next week. Alright friends, that wraps up today's discussion. Alright friends, that wraps up today's discussion.